Hello, my name is Brianna Walker, Queens University of Charlotte Masters in Communication student. Today is February 5th, 2017, and the name of this class is Communication Fluency. I will be discussing a brief summary of the declining significance of historically black colleges and universities, relevance, reputation, and reality in Obama America by Christopher Brown, president of Alcorn State University 2011 through 2013. This article was very important to me as a proud graduate of a historically black university, Winston-Salem State University. I graduated in 2008, and the experience transcended simply academics. I truly became an adult during my time at WSSU, and I learned many new things about myself. I stepped out of my comfort zone a lot. I danced in the artistic rhythmic talent dance company all 4 years in college. It was more than just an academic experience. It was a cultural experience as well. I felt truly welcomed. I felt that if there was anything that I needed help with, that there were resources readily accessible to me, and it was the right fit for me. I did not look at WSSU simply as a black college, a black university. I looked at it as it had a small class size. It was not too far away from home, but far enough away where I could truly gain some independence. It was close to a hub of universities such as Wake Forest University, North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, Johnson C. Smith, which is located in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was the right choice for me. I toured the college and immediately knew that it was my school. The outline we will be discussing is I used the article to create this outline. And as I go through the bullet points, I will give some current up-to-date information about where HBCUs are. This article, again, is a true reflection of where HBCUs were at the time President Obama was elected as the 44th President of the United States of America. And some of the things in the article are still very relevant today in 2017. One of which is controversial information in the national community, the responsibility and accountability of historically black colleges and universities in terms of branding and public relations. We will discuss a history of institutional relevance. The HBCU is born, the emergence of the first HBCUs, which is Wilberforce University out of Ohio, the Higher Education Act of 1965. The reputation of HBCUs, the crossroad of culture and public opinion, the new institutional reality, HBCUs in Obama America, an unfinished conclusion, the significance of mission metamorphosis. When President Obama was elected, a lot of news journalists were wondering if racism really almost, they used the language as to say it didn't matter anymore, or people were finally starting to look at people by the content of their character versus their skin color. And that, for historically black colleges, was I'm pretty sure, a sigh of relief, because in 2008 they did not want to be seen as just black colleges. They want to be viewed as institutions of higher learning for all people. So they looked at a lot of journalists were saying, because of the election of President Obama, that this was sparking a new movement for all institutions and people who have been defined by their color, and saying that yes, our skin color is different, but we are all equal and we all deserve equal opportunities in education and in leadership. In the introduction, Mr. Brown discusses briefly the conflict of information that is disseminated to the public about historically black colleges and universities. And it is that a lot of times HBCUs are sometimes only in the news for negative reasons. A lot of historically black colleges and universities are located in predominantly African American neighborhoods. And sometimes unfortunate things happen, as they happen everywhere. However, a lot of times when something happens in the neighborhood that HBCU was located, that particular story is directly related to that particular HBCU, and people may be persuaded in their opinion about HBCUs because of those stories. He also touches on the responsibility and accountability of HBCUs, the role that they play in their progression and in their demise. It is very important that HBCUs continuously look within themselves and discover new ways to progress and increase their positive exposure and increase and strengthen their internal programs and policies. HBCUs were developed in the late 1800s, mainly by missionary groups and churches, philanthropists, people who believe that descendants of slaves and African Americans needed to be educated. And all of the information that I have read on HBCUs up to this point have all talked about these missionary groups and churches that started these HBCUs, but I have not read why exactly. I know that apparently they wanted the Negro or the African American to be educated, but in a society that was so segregated and still keeping black people suppressed, I'm curious to read as to what really brought on this emergence of institutions of higher learning for black people. Were these people also in agreement that segregation was wrong, that slavery was wrong? I would love to receive some information on that as well. The first HBCU is documented as Wilberforce University in the year 1856, and one of the reasons why they are significantly documented as the first is because they are also the first black controlled institution of higher education. A lot of HBCUs, when they first began, had Caucasian presidents, leadership for years before an African American was put into that position of leadership. So Wilberforce is documented as the first HBCU to be controlled by black people. The Higher Education Act of 1965 defines historically black colleges and universities as any accredited institution of higher education founded prior to 1964, whose primary mission was and continues to be the education of black Americans. And in 1965, I see this as, and again in the 60s, we all know what was going on in our nation, especially in the South, in terms of discrimination, racism, and discrimination. So I think that there was possibly some comfort at the time with having this Higher Education Act put in place, and then the federal funding, even though it was not enough to sustain these institutions, but the federal funding that came with it was a positive. There were government officials that were in support of this Education Act and keeping their college campuses segregated and providing African Americans a place to go to school, because they did not want their children to attend school with African American people. And for African Americans, I'm sure that it was also a feeling of comfort knowing that you had an institution to go to where you would feel welcome, where you would feel at home, where you could be educated and in peace. There are many stories of African Americans who, they stepped outside of their comfort zone, outside of that fear, and attended predominantly white institutions, but they were, in addition to being a college student and focusing on your academics, they had to deal with extreme racism on these campuses. And knowing that sometimes the student body as well as the faculty did not want them there. So I'm sure that having that comfort that, hey, this is a place where I can go, where I can see people who are going to look like me, and I can become educated in a secure and safe environment. So at the time, I'm pretty sure that it was a great thing to have this Higher Education Act put in place. However, now the brand of the HBCU has changed. It is not just about educating Black people, African American people, but it is about educating all minorities, all low income need people, giving people who do not come from wealthy homes an opportunity to receive a quality education. And I feel that some people have tried to hold HBCUs to this Higher Education Act of 1965, and they are simply schools for Black people. And for the past, over 50 years, HBCUs have been trying to display themselves as diverse and globally conscious institutions of higher education. The reputation of HBCUs, the crossroad of culture and public opinion. HBCUs are often perceived as one academic institution by society. Unlike predominantly white institutions, PWIs, if there is an HBCU having an unfortunate event, all HBCUs come under the microscope. Conflicting views on the shared responsibility of public opinion. I have two views that conflict with each other on this matter as far as HBCUs being perceived as one academic institution. And I'm speaking of HBCUs all over the country. If there is an HBCU that is having an issue with funding, whether it be, I guess you could say alumni funding, alumni support, or possibly they had someone on their staff who should not have been in a position to touch the university's money, to write checks. There's been many institutions where HBCUs have had people that had poor financial record keeping practices. And when these things happen, lack of alumni engagement, lack of business management, money management, oftentimes other HBCUs are then investigated. And it's basically like they look at it as, if this HBCU is having these problems, these other five must be having it as well. So in that, I feel like it's unfair because that does not happen to our fellow PWI institutions. But on the flip side of that, and there is a sweeping movement, especially on social media right now, for the support of HBCUs and how they support each other. I also see that as an opportunity for HBCUs to understand the greater responsibility that they have in sustaining themselves, because the sustainability is not just about your particular institution. It is about all of them, because we don't want one bad press release from our university to hurt the five other that surround us in neighboring cities and towns. So we want to make a conscious effort to say that my fellow historically black colleges and universities, my fellow presidents and chancellors, we all have a collective greater responsibility to ensure that the foundations of our institutions are strong, so students will continue to consider to add historically black colleges and universities to their college choice list. There are many students who do not, either they don't know about historically black colleges and universities, or they know about them and they look at them as if, oh, that's not a real school, I'm not going to attend. And again, schools, not school, but schools. So there's that collective responsibility in ensuring that the face of HBCUs, the collective public opinion of HBCUs, is a collaborative effort. It cannot be done by just one institution. I am a graduate of Winston-Salem State University, but I get very excited when I see the wonderful things that North Carolina A&T State is doing, North Carolina Central University in Durham, North Carolina, Shaw University and St. Augustine's University in Raleigh, North Carolina. I want all HBCUs to succeed and to flourish. And the one thing that HBCUs could do a better job, in my personal opinion, is there are a lot of success stories with HBCU graduates, especially with, it's a known fact that HBCUs operate off of less resources than PWIs. However, they still are able to produce very intelligent and politically aware, socially aware graduates who then head on to medical school, dental school, graduate school, doctoral programs. They receive high-ranking positions in the finance industry, in the technology industry. The stories are there, but the institutions don't always share those stories. If the media is not telling your story, as thankfully the internet and social media gives HBCUs the power to share their own stories. So that is something that I think that HBCUs are doing, but they need to also do a better job. The new institutional reality, HBCUs in Obama America. The two pictures here are of African American sitcoms that started in the 80s and the 90s. The Different Worlds was a show. It's the picture located on the left. Was a show about a fictional historically black college called Hillman College. And it was a show that, of course, it was out when I was very, very young. I was in elementary school, and in college, I did not watch the show. However, um, they show a lot of reruns of the show now, and there has been sweeping support of this show that, again, that aired in the 80s and the 90s. Sweeping support from HBCUs in the past 3 years. This show, for a lot of people, it inspired them to not just attend an HBCU, but attend college, period. It showed African Americans working together and supporting one another to be better. It showed the love and support that you get from the faculty, from the people who work in the on-campus food restaurants. It depicted a family, and I watch the show now, and I see so much of my own college experiences, and it's so fun to reminisce, and it just further resonates with me that I made the right decision in choosing an HBCU for my undergraduate studies. The other show on the right is The Cosby Show. Bill Cosby actually started A Different World after he began The Cosby Show, and the his character Heathcliff Huxtable and his wife Claire Huxtable, played by Phylicia Rashad, they both were graduates of Hillman College. Heathcliff was a doctor and Claire was a lawyer. Again, these shows they promoted the message of attending a historically black college and university and being able to come out and achieve professional success. So at the time that these shows aired, I think that they probably would have more effect now than they did at the time that they aired, to be completely honest, because we live in a world right now where people are just soaking up culture like sponges. And I see these two shows as two of the driving factors as to why African Americans are beginning to love their culture in a new way and be proud of their culture in a new way, and also to be able to talk about it in a prideful manner, being proud of where they come from and the institutions that were created for historical purposes. However, those institutions have transcended and are now institutions for diverse populations. I think that these two shows still have a direct connection with that particular movement. And again, HBCUs produce competitive graduates, but they are not always telling the story about what alumni are doing after graduation. There are two HBCUs that I've mentioned already in my presentation, but I'm going to mention them again here. STEM is we know that it is they hold the professions of the future. If you want to have job security in the future, the best field to go into is STEM. And Winston-Salem State University has a phenomenal nursing program, probably one of the best in the state. But I'm not sure if everyone knows about how awesome the nursing program is and about the hiring rate of our graduates after they leave WSSU. All of the nurses I know that have come out of that program they are working and have been working and have received promotions in the field. North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, North Carolina is one of the top engineering schools in the nation, not just in North Carolina, but in the nation. Um, and again, these are the things that we must continue to share about our institutions that will give us that seat of equality at the higher education table, as I mentioned before in my literary review of this article. The three P's that HBCUs must focus on in the future is productivity, performance, and publicity. HBCUs must continue to produce qualified graduates, graduates who are competitive, graduates who are going to influence the global community, and they must look at productivity as one of the top 5 things that the school must accomplish. If the school is not producing graduates that are going on to actually work in the majors that they participated in their undergraduate studies, that's a negative statistic. If you have someone who is graduating with a degree in communications, but they are working as a receptionist, that's not really proof that your communications program is equipping students with the skills that they need to attain a communications career. Performance. I think that institutions must continuously look at the performance of their business practices, look at the success rate of their professors, look at the functions of their buildings, the technology that they have for students. View how those things are performing and see if they're performing at the same rate or an advanced rate compared to some other institutions. It's a known fact that, when you're choosing your college, for the most of us, usually you have a couple to choose from. That wasn't my story, but I know a lot of people do that. So in order to be a choice, performance is key. And that goes back to productivity. If you're not admitting the students, you're definitely not going to graduate them because they're not there. And lastly, publicity. Making sure that the right images and stories are being strategically placed on a continuous basis about where the institution is headed, the great things that the institution is doing in terms of research. What is the institution doing right now, currently, for the community? What has the institution discovered? How are HBCUs currently benefiting the community in real time? How is the HBCU solving community and global problems? An unfinished conclusion: the significance of mission metamorphosis. In the article, Mr. Brown indicates the continual metamorphosis of the HBCU mission. And I partially agree with his statement. In that HBCUs, one thing that they must do is continue to strengthen their diversity within their student body, the faculty, community and business partnerships, and global impact. However, I think that within the changing political and social landscape, it doesn't necessarily mean that the mission must change, but the game plan on executing that mission must change. I'm a firm believer in, I understand that goals do change. However, sometimes the way the game plan that you take to achieve those goals is what's most important in transforming, because the plan that worked 10 years ago will more than likely not work now. So it's important to have the right key components in place to ensure that the machine of the historically black college and university is operating the way that it should. HBCUs are key components that make education accessible for all. And I think that this is something that HBCUs must promote more in the public and within the global community, pushing this mission of simply education, and education for African Americans, minorities, low income students. These are institutions that will work with you to help you find scholarship dollars, work study opportunities. They want you to be successful. They want you to have a chance. They want your life to be changed. It's about more than just a number. It is about changing your life. And HBCUs are institutions that want equality themselves. So they are offering that opportunity of equality to others in terms of education, saying that you don't have to be the son or daughter of a wealthy parent in order to attend school. So again, this article is older. It's an old article. However, a lot of the text mentioned is still very relevant today, especially this statement right here about the metamorphosis of the HBCU and its mission. The HBCU must continue to transform itself into a technological, forward-thinking, and innovative institution of learning. They must continue to figure out what works best for them and their students. I'm a firm believer in there is a college for everybody, and there are students who an HBCU would be the best place for them to attain that higher education. But as the world changes, it's just very important that HBCUs change with the world and make sure that they are too on the fast track and they're moving and not being stagnant. I thank you so much for listening to my summary of this article on historically black colleges and universities. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and I look forward to responding to you. Thank you.